My name is Stuart Titus. I'm the president of a private equity firm called General Hemp, as well as the president and CEO of a public company called Medical Marijuana Inc. Our ticker symbol is MJNA on the over-the-counter markets, and it's a great pleasure to be here in Los Angeles. I myself am a California medical marijuana patient. I've used particularly CBD products to a very significant extent, and a few years ago I had a very severe nerve-related disorder that I had great recovery using our CBD products. My presentation today is on industrial hemp and the botanical CBD and the many benefits for mankind, and we'll certainly be giving a presentation which is geared more for the first-time new users or people who are interested in cannabis and hemp and some of the potential benefits of CBD products. I know there are a number of professionals in the audience, and some of this will be a little bit of a review for them, but certainly there's some great research going on in the field of CBD and various cannabinoids that I'm very happy to see that our company was really the first ones to bring a natural botanical CBD product to the market, and the explosion, the interest from other companies, from individuals, from pharmaceutical companies has been absolutely overwhelming the last few years. Let's see if I can navigate through this. And for more information on our products, we do have a booth downstairs, the Hemp Meds booth, and we'll be here today and tomorrow. Cannabis has been put on the earth for a very good reason. We humans have natural receptors within our bodies for these various cannabis compounds. And cannabis as a primary care option is gaining popularity among professionals in the mainstream medical community today. Industrial hemp should be returned to the American farmer. It is non-psychoactive and has a significant number of benefits, which I'll be glad to cover in today's presentation. Hemp, first of all, contains 80 to 100 different cannabinoids and over 400 beneficial chemical compounds. We've all been conditioned to believe that cannabis is an evil substance, and thanks to people like Dr. Sanjay Gupta and his recent research on CNN, who has recently doubled down on the medicinal benefits of marijuana. We're glad to see that trend is certainly changing. Hemp is, of course, a cannabis cousin to marijuana, and they're all in the cannabis family, but hemp acts as a bioremediator. So when you plant hemp in the soil, it helps to clean toxic soils, and I'll have more on this later in the presentation. Hemp uses significantly less water than other crops, and it grows with minimal fertilizers, no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or agrochemicals. So particularly in drought-stricken areas of the country, California and the West, we think hemp would be a very significant agricultural crop. Research on the human genome has been very interesting, that the scientists who've spent millions of dollars and years researching the human genome, and the reason they had done this was because they were looking to find that most causes of disease were inherited from your ancestors, from your parents, your lineage, what have you. And it's extremely interesting that this research shows that only 10% of disease actually comes from genetically inherited tendencies. 90% of our illness comes from various environmental factors, and a clean environment can help improve overall health and wellness, and hemp certainly has a great role with that. Just imagine what hemp can do for you, making it part of your daily health regimen. Since we're here in California and the Dodgers are close to a playoff berth, we thought we'd go over some basic ground rules just to cover some of the very basics that will allow us a foundation for some things in our later presentation. So just to make the distinction and delineation between hemp and marijuana, you can see hemp on the left side of the screen grows a very tall crop, particularly when it's grown for fiber. It might grow 10, 12, 14 feet. And generally has a relatively high concentration of a particular cannabinoid known as CBD or cannabidiol, which is considered non-psychoactive. On the other hand, its cousin marijuana generally grows short and bushy and is characterized by a larger concentration of the psychoactive cannabinoid known as THC. Going further, if you were to think of cannabis as being considered the parent plant, then perhaps hemp and marijuana might be the children. Both CBD and THC, the two cannabinoids we've already talked about, have medicinal value, as do all the other cannabinoids, and many of these are now just becoming popular, and over the coming years I think you'll hear more and more about these other cannabinoids as far as research goes. The U.S. government, which on one hand considers marijuana to be a federally scheduled I controlled substance with no medicinal value, the same U.S. government actually has a patent on the therapeutic use of cannabinoids. It's called the 507 patent, technically titled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants, and it's U.S. patent number 6630507. Our company does have a portfolio company called Canna Life Sciences. They're based in New York, and they have two indications for use to develop pharmaceutical compounds based on the 507 patent. The first one for a condition called hepatic encephalopathy, which is technically a liver-brain disorder caused by long-term opiate use or excessive alcohol abuse. The second indication is for the treatment of traumatic brain injury or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is getting a lot of press these days with the National Football League players. And we really think that the neuroprotective benefits we're seeing in some of the preclinical work is going to show significant benefit for these football players, particularly as they get into the later stages of their career and into retirement. It's interesting also to note that you don't have to be a National Football League player undergoing 20 years of concussion to have this traumatic brain injury. One car accident can cause some very severe long-term effects, and we're certainly very excited about the neuroprotective benefits and the long-term benefits for some of these unfortunate individuals. Quoting from the U.S. government's patent, the cannabinoids are found to have particular application as neuroprotectants in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, and non-psychoactive cannabinoids such as cannabidiol or CBD are particularly advantageous to use. And this comes from the U.S. government's patent, which was developed by Dr. Julius Axelrod, who is a Nobel Prize-winning laureate here in the U.S. This slide, I guess it didn't come through too well on the presentation here, but it just depicts our endocannabinoid system, and particularly the entourage effect is another very interesting concept in cannabinoid therapy today.
Let's talk about marijuana and your brain. It's a rather complicated process, so let's start off with what's familiar to you. THC. THC is the chemical in weed that gets you high. You feel lightheaded, feel giddy, sometimes relaxed. Marijuana, you can smoke it, you can eat it in an extract of food, you can inhale it with a vapor pen, or consume it in an oil form. It's especially good for little kids who are taking it as a medicine. No matter the method, THC goes through your bloodstream and into your brain. And there, the THC is going to latch onto these special receptors. When they are stimulated, you release dopamine. It sends signals to various nerve cells all around your body and makes the user feel high. Not all cannabis is going to get you stoned. That's because marijuana contains another chemical known as CBD. That's cannabidiol. Marijuana plants that have low THC and high CBD can work really well as a medicine. They can treat things like epilepsy. It works because the CBD chemical can quiet excessive electrical and chemical activity in the brain. I know this 3-year-old girl who went from having 300 seizures a week to 2 per month after her parents gave her cannabis with high levels of CBD. When it comes to marijuana, there's some 500 different chemical compounds. All these compounds work together. It's something known as the entourage effect. It's important because you can't just take a chemical out of marijuana and make a medicine. You need the whole plant, especially when it comes to using pot instead of pills.
Well, so I think that partly describes the entourage effect, and just to review, in many cases the whole plant extract has a far greater effect than that of individual component extraction, or what the pharmaceutical companies might call active pharmaceutical ingredient. So the entourage effect is quite a concept in CBD and cannabinoid therapy today. The entourage effect, again, has the ability to affect multiple targets within the body, improve absorption of active ingredients, overcome defense mechanism, as well as to minimize side effects. It's interesting to note that synthetically developed marijuana-like drugs actually are FDA approved here in the U.S. and scheduled as Schedule 2 in the case of Sesamet and Nabilone, and Schedule 3 in the case of Marinol or Dronabinol. Yet a natural plant containing natural botanical substances are somehow considered a Schedule 1 at the federal level, and this all needs to change. A little bit on the endocannabinoid system. This is something that's inherent within all of us, humans, and also within all mammalian creatures on the planet. And Dr. David Allen has a very nice summary of the endocannabinoid system I'd like to play for you.
Hello, my name is Dr. David Allen. I'm a retired cardiac surgeon and a member of the International Cannabinoid Research Society, ICRS. That means I'm a cannabinoid research scientist. And I'm here to tell you about the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, and the significance and how it will change medicine. And we discovered the endocannabinoid system about 30 years ago, and we really didn't understand the significance of its discovery. And so we found out that this is a chemical communication that your body has. It's not electrical, it's chemical, and it's kind of like the hormone systems that people are familiar with. And your body makes these cannabinoids. They're endogenous, so they're endocannabinoids, and they perform some miraculous functions in the body. And we're just learning the significance of these functions. And basically, the endocannabinoid system is responsible for homeostasis. Most people don't understand what that really means, but it's the body's ability to maintain itself and function in the proper environment. And so it's critically important that that doctors in the future understand this control mechanism. And we're finding out that that manipulation of this endocannabinoid system will control diabetes. It controls cancer. It controls whether you can survive a heart attack or stroke. And so this is critically important for doctors to understand this new science. And the discovery of the endocannabinoid system is the single most important medical scientific discovery ever, and will save more lives than the discovery and application of sterile surgical technique. And I'm a heart surgeon saying that. So more people will be saved by manipulation of the endocannabinoid system than are currently saved by surgery. And so we found out there's studies that if you use cannabis for 20 years or more, just smoking cannabis, that it decreases the incidence of diabetes by 66%. There are studies that show when they specifically stress beta cells of the pancreas to try to kill them by oxidative techniques, that if you use cannabinoids, it protects the cells from this oxidation. And so really what this means is you can use cannabis and decrease the incidence of diabetes by 66% or more, maybe if you use it other ways, if you eat it. And your doctor currently can't give you any medicine at all that decreases the incidence of diabetes by even 2%. So this is a miracle that cannabis does this, and it means that your use of cannabis will protect the beta cells of your pancreas from oxidation. That means basically all cannabis use is medical, regardless of whether you understand the science behind this or not.
Well, great words from Dr. Allen, and of course, just to recapitulate some of what he was saying, that the endocannabinoid system performs some miraculous functions in the human body. It's the single most important scientific and medical discovery ever, and that manipulation of the endocannabinoid system will save more lives than will be saved by surgery. And of course, it's great hearing that from a retired cardiac surgeon. It's unfortunately a little sad to note that given the discovery of the endocannabinoid system back in the mid-1980s, that only 1 in 7 medical schools today even mentions this, much less teaches doctors anything about it. Dr. McCollum, who's the Israeli researcher, better known as the grandfather of cannabis research, was the first to isolate the THC molecule back in 1964. And Dr. McCollum mentions that perhaps 40% of all pharmaceutical medications may be made obsolete with the further research and clinical development of cannabis and cannabinoid-based medications. Again, Dr. Allen concludes by saying that all use of cannabis is medicinal. A drug abuse expert has come out publicly saying that CBD is safe and may have therapeutic value for a number of medical conditions. Of course, this gave significant ammunition to advocates in favor of rescheduling or descheduling cannabis, at least hemp, and bolstering businesses based on cannabidiol. This researcher, Dr. Nora Volkow, who's director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, or NIDA, made the comments in an editorial published by the Huffington Post, and basically said that her group is starting to address prior research barriers and expedite progress into potentially valuable compound as well as other components of the marijuana plant, and especially added that CBD may be poised to make great inroads into our U.S. pharmacopoeia. Again, just to recapitulate our endocannabinoid system, we have the CB1 receptor, which is found mostly in the brain. Your CB2 receptors are found mostly in the viscera or the abdominal region. The human body produces natural cannabinoids. Plant-based cannabinoids can potentially supplement the endocannabinoid system or the body's lack of natural production. And these phytocannabinoids are potentially essential nutrients that are required in our diets for optimal health. Hopefully someday we'll come up with an actual recommended daily allowance of this. Nonetheless, cannabinoids can be found in various plants besides cannabis. So besides marijuana and hemp, you can find cannabinoids in such crops as flax, hops, and echinacea. Another interesting point was a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome was first postulated by a Dr. Ethan Russo, who's a famous cannabis researcher. Dr. Russo heads the International Cannabinoid Research Society, and his theory was that if a patient was cannabinoid deficient, one would potentially experience numerous health challenges, including migraine headache, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, and other treatment-resistant conditions. And his work was published in the Neuroendocrinology letter, and the link is shown up on the screen. There is also a significant amount of current legislation going on with hemp and marijuana. The rest, medical marijuana now is legal in 23 U.S. states, plus the District of Columbia. Recreational marijuana is legal in 4 states. 15 states have passed CBD-only laws. Many states have also passed state-level legislation allowing farmers to grow hemp once the federal restrictions are lifted. And research crops of hemp have been planted in the U.S. this year, both in Kentucky as well as Colorado. Harvests are expected this fall, and we're very excited to see this trend continuing. There have been prior court rulings favoring hemp food products here in America, and just to cover that briefly, in the late 1990s, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency tried to outlaw all hemp food products from entering America. Canada had legalized hemp at the mid-1990s, and many Canadian hemp seed, hemp oil products were gaining popularity with health enthusiasts here in the U.S. Of course, hemp is very rich in omega fatty acids as well as essential amino acids, and the benefits are very strong, but nonetheless, the DEA claimed that these hemp products contain trace amounts of THC and other potentially dangerous cannabinoids and wanted to outlaw them from the U.S. markets. So a group got together, the Hemp Industries Association, took the DEA to court over this and to allow hemp food products that contain trace amounts of the psychoactive cannabinoid THC into America, because these trace amounts were not going to have any psychoactive effect. And in the end, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled in favor of the Hemp Industries Association, and today hemp seed, hemp oil, hemp protein powder products are regularly found on the health food store shelves here in the U.S. So with this now, we can perhaps get into some of the additional benefits of industrial hemp for industrial uses and the rest. So let's move forward here. Starting with hemp history, the first uses of hemp and various cannabis preparations date back to ancient China and their initial health and wellness practices. Hemp was America's first crop, arriving here via the early European settlers to America, came here in the early 1600s. And it used to be illegal for a U.S. farmer not to grow hemp. One used to be able to pay their taxes with hemp. It was as good as any paper currency in terms of value in early America. Many old-time cannabis preparations made their way into the U.S. pharmacopoeia. Many conditions that would be able to be treated with these old-time preparations are listed here, including neuralgia, tetanus, typhus, cholera, rabies, dysentery, alcoholism, etc. We have pictures of some of these old cannabis preparations, and they were part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia from about 1850 till the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act really outlawed the use of marijuana hemp here in the U.S., and it was a couple of years after that that all the preparations were finally removed from the U.S. pharmacopoeia, but obviously we're hoping to change that in the very near future. Previously we covered the cannabinoid receptors, your CB1 and CB2 receptor. The human body usually produces significant amounts of endocannabinoids when undergoing extreme exercise along with endorphins. So it's been postulated that the runner's high is actually a release of a number of these endocannabinoids, and particularly one, which is known as Anandamide, is kind of famous because it was the first one to be discovered, yet Anandamide in the old Sanskrit means the bliss chemical. So the runner's high is kind of the release of this interesting bliss chemical. And another note, it's very interesting that the mother's breast milk contains significant amounts of these endocannabinoids. So it's really something that we're geared to have in our upbringing. So there are a significant amount of industrial uses for hemp, including the sustainability and renewability aspect, which is something that's well needed in our society today. Some of the industrial uses include the biomass, which can be used for biofuels, ethanol, methanol, etc. The textiles, interestingly enough, you can have a significant amount of building and construction materials made from hemp, bioplastics that actually biodegrade in landfills, and food and nutrition are many of these significant industrial applications. Hemp can provide numerous benefits for the American economy, potentially adding many percentage points back to our nation's gross domestic product. And bringing hemp back to America, the agricultural practices and the economic benefits that are sustainable and renewable. Talking about some of the industrial applications, hemp-based biofuels. Hemp, of course, grows very quickly. We've seen crops as high as 14 to 16 feet tall, growing in as little as 90 days. The tremendous biomass can be used to fuel electrical generation power plants. For example, in Brazil, they use the sugarcane crop to produce an ethanol for gasoline. But unfortunately, sugarcane has various inherent environmental toxins. Hemp can provide this same clean energy fully in a carbon negative basis, and we believe hemp can provide a similar or greater biomass than can sugarcane, where you can only grow one crop per year. Some areas of the country we like to think 3 and 4 hemp crops per year may be feasible. This, of course, reduces our dependence on petroleum-based fossil fuels. Hemp-based bioplastics, natural crop fibers, are being used in Europe to produce car parts such as door panels and dashboards. The picture on the top left shows Henry Ford's original hemp car, which he had developed. And he made the exterior from intertwining various hemp fibers. And the car's body was much stronger than steel. And you can see a worker here taking an axe to the rear trunk and actually not being able to dent it. So it's stronger than steel, but much lighter than steel. And it's too bad we've kind of lost this technology over the years, but it's slowly returning. And hemp bioplastics may replace the oil-based plastic water bottles that are filling up and clogging our landfills and out in the Pacific Ocean and the rest. So hemp-based bioplastics offer a biodegradable advantage to alleviate the current environmental problems afflicting many of these landfills. Hemp also can be used for construction materials. We've mentioned this briefly before, but the building materials are durable, non-toxic, and carbon negative. An average tree takes 20 years to grow, but a hemp board can be harvested and produced within 120 days. And we show a picture of hemp board there. And then on the lower picture actually is a hemp house built with hemp materials out of Asheville, North Carolina. The parents who built this house wanted to do all they could to help their daughter who had multiple chemical sensitivities. And hemp itself is naturally antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal, plus it's a tremendous insulator. So for construction and building materials, we're very excited about the future here. Hemp-based textiles, fibers can be developed into quality clothes and textile products. It's interesting to note that the fashion industry ranks second, only behind the petroleum industry, as the largest environmental polluters. And this comes to us through EcoWatch. Organic cotton is much more sustainable, but is considerably more expensive to grow, and only about 1% of all cotton is organic. Conventional cotton has a wholesome image, but unfortunately requires about 10% of the world's agrochemicals to grow. And when you look at that compared to the benefits of hemp textiles, I think the environmental friendly nature, you'll see that this is something that we really should be doing far, far more of. Synthetic fibers and like polyester and nylon are not particularly biodegradable. Hemp food products, one can sustain life on hemp seed as it contains a significant amount of essential nutrients. And these essential nutrients include essential amino acids as well as your essential fatty acids, as well as immunoglobulins, which help support the immune system. And here's a little list of some of the benefits of hemp seed oil and the benefits for wellness and longevity, particularly your essential fatty acids and the immunoglobulins, which again help support the immune system. Now, globulin is the third most abundant protein in the human body, behind that of collagen and elastin. It creates natural antibodies that produce and help the body to protect itself from invading organisms. Gamma globulins combat cell-invading antigens, and these are produced by the lymphatic system, where all toxins must first pass before entering the bloodstream. So very important for the immune system. Interestingly enough, hemp also contains a significant amount of electrical properties. And chemical engineers, including a Dr. David Mitlin of Clarkson University in New York, have found that hemp holds amazing electrical properties, both in conducting electricity as well as in storing it for capacitors. Hemp is especially good as an electrical capacitor, with the potential to improve hybrid auto economy as well as for solar power. And these all-natural, sustainable, renewable batteries may rival the best metals-based graphene batteries for energy storage, and all at about 1/100th of the cost. Hemp nanosheets, as the patent on carbon nanosheets mentioned, again can be extremely conductive for electrical activity. And we've mentioned the lithium ion as well as graphene batteries, which unfortunately have to be mined, and they're quite toxic to the environment. Interestingly enough, our brain functions primarily on electrical signals and electrical activities. And it seems that CBD is helping many children with seizure disorders. And our question is this effect partly due to the electrical activity within hemp and CBD? Very interesting future research. We've covered the fact that hemp potentially supports enhanced and proper electrical activity within the body. These two German researchers pictured below, Drs. Sackman and Nair, actually won a Nobel Prize for their research back in 1991 on cell membranes and low-level electrical activity within our bodies. It turns out that the functioning of the cell membrane to allow nutrients to come into the cell, as well as the excretion of waste products, is all done on an electrical basis, not a chemical basis. And many times the body brings certain nutrients to various areas of the body because of their electrical properties rather than their chemical properties. Each cell within our bodies has an electrical potential of about 70 millivolts. But if you multiply that by 100 trillion cells within the body, obviously we have a significant amount of electrical activity within us. We are electrochemical beings, so to speak. Our pharmaceutical interests and medicine today really focuses on the chemical side, but there's also an electrical component that hemp may potentially be reaching and fostering some of the great healing that we've seen. To review some of the essentials about CBD, the U.S. government patent, of course, mentions the antioxidant effects that protects from oxidative stress and free radical damage within the body. CBD is potentially the world's most potent antioxidant with significant health and wellness benefits deriving from that. They're also mentioned in the U.S. government's patent the anti-aging benefits, and presumably this is because of the improvement in mitochondrial functioning within the cell. We've covered the fact that there's a neuroprotectant ability that protects, strengthens, potentially regenerates nerves, and this then has a direct effect on the health of the muscular system, the skeletal system, as well as internal organs. So this again brings back to the anti-aging and longevity potential benefits here. Recent research from Israel even shows that CBD helps in the healing of broken bones and potentially into osteoporosis. This chart depicts some of the extracts that can be attained from hemp, and as you can see in the center there are a number of cannabinoids, but also there's cellulose, plant waxes, fats, chlorophyll, terpenoids and flavonoids, which give the characteristic smell and taste, and the sesquiterpenoids. So there are a number of interesting chemical components here. And we mentioned briefly about the antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal activities with the number of hospital-borne infections on the rise. Hemp may wind up playing a significant role here. It's interesting that the original Dr. Scholl's foot pads were made from hemp. We can, in the future, envision hemp-based Band-Aids, hemp-based gauze or surgical compresses, hemp-based hospital sheets and gowns, scrubs, etc., even into tampons. And believe it or not, tampons are considered medical devices in our society today. Interesting that on travels to Hong Kong and China, how many people use surgical masks because of the pollution. I think it would be far better for people to use a natural hemp mask, but nonetheless, there are about 4,400 people a day or 1.6 million people a year in China and Asia that die because of the effects of air pollution. Additional benefits from hemp deal with bioremediation. Hemp was planted at Chernobyl to assist in accelerating the cleanup process from the nuclear disaster going back to 1986. Certainly in America today, our farmland contains a significant amount of toxicity. We use a huge amount of agrochemicals, pesticides, fertilizers, Roundup, etc. And interestingly enough, after a hemp crop is planted, it actually adds nutrients back to the soil, saving this soil from further decline. In addition to hemp being significant for the soil, we take that one step further. Imagine taking that into your body and potentially having this very same detox and cleanup benefit if you incorporate this on a regular basis. Again, hemp adds these valuable nutrients back to the soil. Potentially these valuable nutrients, trace minerals, etc., can come back to the human consumer as well. And to summarize some of what I've been talking about today and a few final points, the medicinal side of cannabis, hemp, and marijuana is expanding exponentially. Once we have a sufficient number of farmers planting hemp, we can attain what are called in economics economies of scale, and we can start to get into some of these wonderful industrial uses, as well as better understand the nutritional benefits of hemp seed, hemp oil, and hemp protein powder. Already with significant industrial uses, given the entrepreneurial spirit of the American inventor, numerous other uses and industries will assuredly develop. Anyone who has not read the book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, we'd love for you to do that. It talks about approximately 50,000 uses for the industrial hemp plant. It's a great book by Jack Herer, and we're very excited to be able to bring that along to people. And I know that our company is very interested in helping to get the education out to the rest of the world. And speaking of the rest of the world, we've seen recently countries such as Brazil allowing natural botanical CBD products into their country. It's been a tremendous evolution and happened in a very quick and accelerated fashion down there. Previously, Brazil had been very anti-marijuana, cannabis, hemp. Everything was lumped in together. Now they're able to see the benefit of non-psychoactive CBD with certain medical conditions and have allowed this product into the country. Looks like Mexico may be the next one to follow, and it's great to see the worldwide consciousness rising. Natural botanical-based cannabinoid extracts may play a significant role in future health and wellness, and we believe this really represents an evolutionary quantum leap forward in human healthcare. Previously, I've mentioned Dr. McCoolum as the grandfather of cannabis research. Recently, he's been featured on a documentary where he mentions that each of us have different internal endocannabinoid profiles. And further, that these individual profiles, the combination of the internal cannabinoids, may actually be the factor that distinguishes all of our personalities. Natural botanical-based CBD, due to the entourage effect, may allow for new therapeutic benefits for patients suffering with nerve-related disorders. Potentially, this new cannabinoid therapy may open an entirely new door in the field of neurological medicine, with the potential for nerve regeneration or neurogenesis, once thought impossible. And this is extremely exciting. Over time, research will tell if phytocannabinoids are truly a necessary part of our dietary requirements, and soon a recommended daily allowance may be determined. And these essential nutrients are termed essential because they need to come from our diets. The bodies cannot synthesize them on our own. And certain essential nutrients, such as essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, and these essential phytocannabinoids all can be found within industrial hemp. And hope you'll please join us in welcoming hemp back home to the United States of America. Thank you all.